One of the things that's on my mind a lot lately is how we come together and connect with each other, and the different barriers that are put up, the walls that we have that hinder that process. I think about that in terms of myself, personally and professionally. I think about that just as a person who is observing other people and their interactions. And it's just interesting. We're in a very interesting time right now culturally. There's some things that to me are very common in our culture that I see all the time. That it's created a pause with me, and I'm just curious what you think about this. The idea that we are so quick to make assumptions about people that we know and even people that we don't know, and sometimes in what we conclude from those assumptions, it may actually keep us from making a connection, or it may break an existing connection that we have. It's just really fascinating to watch how that plays out today, especially in 2018. And some of the assumptions that we make are based on absolutely nothing at all but a stereotype, or maybe just labels that we use, which is one of the reasons why I don't like to use labels for myself. For example, if I say that I identify a certain way, that's a question that people actually ask so often. How do you identify, So if I say I identify as Black American, some people may assume, well, so does that mean you don't use the term African American and you have some kind of disconnect from Africa? No, I just identify as Black American, first and foremost because I was born in America, and there are some distinctive differences between people who were born on the continent of Africa in different countries and people who were born in American culture, and I like to recognize those differences. I embrace my African brothers and sisters, and that's a part of me, a huge part of who I am, genetically, spiritually, and culturally. But I feel like when I used to use that term, African and American, then people get confused. Oh, well, what country in Africa were you born? Well, I was born in the country of Chicago, Illinois, Yeah, so we make assumptions about each other all the time, honestly, and it's interesting when that happens, because so often than not, our assumptions are so far from the truth. Some other examples might be you go to church and they assume that you're a Christian. You don't go to church and people assume that you're not. If you say you make a good salary, you say, hey, I make a pretty decent salary, then people assume that you aren't still living check to check, or that you don't have any kind of financial struggles at all. People assume if you're young and just starting out, you don't know anything. But people assume that if you're older, that you have all the answers, and that if you don't, that something's wrong with you. People make assumptions based on your education, the amount of education that you've had, thinking that if you have a degree in something specific, that you must be an expert in that field, and much in the same way people assume that if you don't have that piece of paper, that you're not at all, couldn't possibly be an expert. People make assumptions that based on who you're in relationship with. They look at, if you're a woman and you're in a relationship with a cisgender male, they assume that you're straight. I think staying away from labels might be a start. I know that it's hard for us to wrap our heads around people who don't identify as anything specific, people who don't want to use labels to describe who they are, how they are, what they are. But I think that when we pull the language out and we just focus on just being that presence, then we can focus on the essence of who we really happen to be. If you're an expert, then you have to act like an expert. People they have certain expectations, and they're making an assumption that you know it all in that particular department. So if you don't use that language, then just be the expert. Just operate in a manner that would be more indicative of who you actually are, and allow people to imbibe your presence and your essence without having to have a definition or have it be laid out for them. I'd like to ask you, what are some of the assumptions that you make about other people? And I'd like to challenge you to think about what those assumptions are, and to maybe hold yourself accountable for that, and maybe go through your time this week, if you're able to draw your attention to those moments when you are making assumptions about other people, and see if you can stop yourself and just be present and take what they're giving you in that moment, and only what they're giving you in that moment. Just be present with who they are and how they are right then and there, and try not to project or put anything else into that interaction than what belongs there. See if that changes how your interaction goes, or if you're in relationship with them. See how that maybe changes the dynamic of the relationship. Just be mindful of that. Think about those things. Let me know if you have any thoughts that you'd like to share. If anyone has ever made assumptions about you that you felt like were painful, or you felt like were so really wrong and it really hurt you, and you responded a certain way. How did you handle that? How are you moving forward from that? How are you not repeating that same pattern with other people?